A few guys have asked me recently why I've gotten involved in politics when I never did before, and I always tell them the same thing: is this isn't politics, man. This is about the complete fall of our nation and the ruin of our lives and the nations of other people as well. This is far bigger than politics. Almost everybody I know has a pretty clear picture of what's going on. More people are figuring it out every day as it becomes more and more obvious. They send me stuff constantly about what's happening, videos and documents and links and all this kind of stuff. And the thing is, I already know what's going on, you guys. I'm not interested in rehashing it and going over it again. What I'm interested in is the material that is actually pertinent and the solution. What can we do about it? That's what's important. Talking is not enough, okay? I have a tendency to see things really clearly, but I'm not as prolific at voicing them as a lot of the people out there these days that speak clearly and can get right through to you. But having been a writer of sorts, I have put down some information that I believe is very pertinent to what has been happening now. And what I'm going to go through is what the country has endured in the past and what they've done about it, and I think you'll see why when I'm done. And I've written it down, and I'm going to do my best to try to read it to you clearly here, okay? This took me a little bit of research, all right? And I'm going to talk first off about the Constitution. The Constitution and the First Amendment guarantees the right to peaceably assemble, be that church, home gatherings, or assembly of any kind, the right to freedom of speech, no censoring, freedom of the press, and freedom of religion as well, the right to protest and petition government for redress of grievances. The Constitution was written in a time of crisis, followed by many other crises, during which time these rights have never been infringed upon, suspended, or changed until now. These crises include the Civil War, World War I, World War II, and quite a few other wars. During the first 15 years of the United States' existence, the country was plagued with 7 different smallpox epidemics, mostly wiping out the Indians there, right? Next came yellow fever in 1793. In 1832, 1849, and 1866, deadly cholera outbreaks occurred in America. From 1849 to 1851, 4,557 died in St. Louis alone, 5,969 in Cincinnati, and 700 in Detroit. All right. During and after World War I, a deadly influenza virus, sometimes called the Spanish flu, killed 50 million worldwide and 675,000 in the U.S. During the war, this outbreak killed more U.S. soldiers than enemy weapons did. Then there was the Asian flu in 1958 and the swine flu in 1976. 1968 and 69 brought us the Hong Kong flu, another form of influenza, a lung thing, okay? I was 8 and 9 years old at the time. At this time, we had the Vietnam War, which brought thousands to protest in the streets, the Woodstock Music Festival, with 500,000 people gathered for 3 days in the mud, and I went to school every day. This epidemic killed an estimated 5 million worldwide. Keep in mind that the world population of that time was only 3.5 billion compared to the 9 billion of today. Far less than half. Next was AIDS in the late 80s, of which I probably knew more people who died from. At its peak year in 1995, AIDS took the lives of 50,877 people in the U.S. alone. In early 2003, we had severe acute respiratory syndrome, better known as SARS. H1N1 in 2009, another influenza virus affecting the lungs. 60.8 million cases were reported in the U.S. Although young people had no natural immunity, many folks over the age of 60 had natural antibodies against the virus, most likely from exposure to another H1N1 virus in earlier years, in their earlier lives. Okay? Natural immunity. So you see, these kind of illness things have been always gone on. They've gone on countless times before. We got through them then, and we will get through this one again. Natural immunity ends up taking over. Everybody doesn't die. It's part of life. It's what happens. You can't get around it. Then there was MERS 2014, not a big one. And now we have this. Throughout all of these crises, not one of the aforementioned constitutional rights was ever suspended or infringed upon until now. The Constitution of the Weimar Republic of Germany was celebrated as one of the great domestic constitutions of history. So how did it fail? Well, because it had an emergency exception to the Constitution and thus suspended these rights, therefore effectively allowing the rise of Nazi Germany and World War II. Recently, in the state of Pennsylvania, a judge, under pressure from the quite obviously corrupt governor, concluded that the liberties protected in the Constitution are not fair weather freedoms. The Constitution cannot accept a, quote, new normal where the basic liberties of the people can be subordinated to open-ended emergency mitigation measures. The Constitution sets lines, and these actions cross those lines. A good portion of this information I got from a recent talk given by a big shot lawyer named, Robert Barnes, who he says it far better than I do, and I'll leave a link to that video in the drop box below. Alright, so throughout all this time, none of our rights have ever been suspended. To peaceful assembly, to go to church, to petition for grievances, even to keep our businesses open. Never been infringed upon until now. Okay, now I want to get to the point. At this time, California is one of our most restrained and communist states to date. Okay, here's some of what's been happening there over the last 7 to 8 months since this thing began. Are you ready for this? The big corporate elites like Walmart, Costco, Amazon, McDonald's, etc. have profited a whopping $4 trillion above their normal earnings in this time. 67 million Americans lost their job, and 98,000 small businesses were forced to close forever. Do you guys see what's going on here? It's pretty obvious what's going on. Okay, we're kind of getting screwed. So what does that mean? Every time you go into a big corporation and give them money, you are feeding the dog that intends to bite your head off. So at least a major part of this solution is to stay out of corporations and mob small businesses. I've been doing that since this thing began. I search out small businesses. Maybe I have to spend a little more. Maybe their selection isn't as big as the big corporate places. But they are my people. They are you. They are me. They are your neighbor. They are all of us. I personally don't believe governments have any power anymore, which has become pretty obvious. I mean, recently they were censoring the president, who's still the president. I don't care who he is. So, I mean, when does that happen? And with all the other stuff going on, you can see that government does not have control. I don't believe they even control the military anymore. That's the way it's looking now. So we're really on this. So what we have left is we have us, the people, against these guys who are doing this shit and trying to destroy us. So staying out of the corporation is a major important part of this. Supporting the small business, keeping our people alive is a major way to fight back. There are also other ways to fight back, and I have that are not that hard to do. And if everybody did them, we would put the big screws to these motherfuckers, man. And I put a link below to a video I made about what those things are. They're all they all make perfect sense, and they're perfectly obvious. Gandhi, a lot of people have heard the name Gandhi. I don't know the year, but I did see the movie. It's pretty good, and I've known about Gandhi for a long time. He was an Indian lawyer. I think he studied in London, and when he returned to India, he really didn't like what was going on. At the time, India was occupied by the British, who almost conquered the world at one point. Okay? And they were under rule, and they were occupied. And Gandhi managed to get the British to leave India using what's referred to as civil disobedience. The people absolutely refused to do what they were told to do. It's a really cool movie, man. Some of the stuff they went through to make this happen was pretty intense. And the British ended up leaving. And that's what we need to do. There's 8 billion of us. If all of us, this whole plan hinges a whole lot on people doing what they are told. And if nobody did that, and everybody stopped giving them money via the fucking corporations, we would put a serious hurt to them. And in that video, I talk about the ways that we can do that. But everybody needs to do it. Everybody needs to stop feeding the dog that's going to take us down. The country's going to go out within the next few years. Anybody can see that. These people want the same thing as all the other countless tyrants through history, as Cortez did here, as Joseph Stalin, as Genghis Khan did. They want to kill millions of people, and they want to rule who's left. And that's what's fucking going on. You know, and what happens is you have a generation that goes through this kind of stuff. They fight it and they beat it in the past. I don't know that we're going to beat this one. And then you have a generation or two later, the people have lived in peace, and they don't really believe it could ever happen again. But when you look at history, it's happened repeatedly all the time throughout history. Somewhere in the world, some kind of conquering and killing and making everybody's lives miserable is going on. There's always these crazy, sick bastards who want ultimate power, want to rule everybody, and want to kill people at will. I just talked with a friend of mine in California. I asked her what's going on there, because they are under heavy lockdown again all of a sudden. She said, well, some of the restaurants are staying open, but they have to feed you outside. She said, but there's a few of them that are disobeying the rules and are open and allowing people to eat inside. She said, those are the ones we were all going to. She also told me there's one town, she didn't say which one, where the whole town's staying open. They're not closing anything. They're disobeying the law, which is what needs to happen. We need that. We need a lot more of that. It's starting. It needs to continue. Okay, guys, it is hard to know what's going on going forward, what will happen, but these guys did not come this far to drop the ball now. They are very determined and will stop at nothing but overwhelming force. Anybody can see that. So what more is there to this plan? This can't be the whole thing. I have a document somebody sent me from Canada months ago, and it was an official there who does not like what's going on, and he released this document. You can take a look at it. I'll leave a link to it. It's pretty radical, man, and it talks about the release, and part of it talks about the release of a new C-21, which is supposed to be considerably stronger and will actually make people ill. They'll be calling it a mutation. I'm already hearing talk of this mutation thing. So I think they may have released it already, because the people are getting pretty sick of this shit. They're getting pretty uppity about it. Also, there is a documentary I saw in the early summer at a friend's place in Virginia, and it's called Unacknowledged. You might want to check that one out. And it lays down everything like I've seen it, but at the end, what he believes the third phase will be is that he says that the military has the technology to fake an alien attack, and that he thinks that will be the third phase. I talked to a friend of mine who is military. He told me, he said, yes, they do. The media is already talking that there's aliens now, right? So if they do that, they will freak the people out. I mean, look what this little lie that really hasn't done much has done for everybody. The media says it's done something, but my eyes tell me it hasn't done much at all. Not too many ill people around me. And if they do any one of those two things, a lot of us will know what's going on. They do that alien thing, everybody will go running to the people who are doing it to protect them, right? So it will finish us off, man. The people just can't afford to keep being stupid. It just can't. It's not at this time. But unfortunately, there's nothing I can do. And on all honesty, I'm having to contemplate the end of my life very soon, and yours too. I haven't contemplated that, but I've been contemplating mine, and that's going to probably be the only way out. For the people who live, who do survive it, it's going to be worse than for the people who didn't. Anybody can see that coming by looking at history. Go Google some pictures of what's happened through history under the other great rulers, and see what you think of the mass piles of bodies. It never ends. It never ends. It's going to be the first time it's come to our shores like that. And so, with that, you guys, I've placed a few things down in the drop box below that you might want to take a look at, and I will see you on the next video.